Deep along the rugged coast of Maine, far away from busy cities, far away from crowded highways and noisy streets, there stood an old wooden lighthouse watching over the endless Atlantic Ocean. The waves moved gently against the rocky shore, the cold ocean wind whispered through the quiet night, and beneath the soft glow of the lighthouse, an old man lived alone. His name was Samuel. For nearly 30 years, Samuel had been the lighthouse keeper of this forgotten corner of Maine. Long ago, he had lived a different life, a life filled with people, with conversations, with the sounds of a busy world. But one day, Samuel chose a quieter path. He left everything behind and came to the lonely lighthouse by the sea. Every morning, he woke up to the sound of waves touching the shore. He opened the old wooden windows, watched the sunrise over the Atlantic, and checked the great lighthouse lamp that guided ships through the darkness. Every evening, as the sun disappeared beyond the ocean, Samuel climbed the narrow spiral stairs and turned on the powerful light. Even though fewer ships travelled near the coast, he never stopped. Because Samuel believed a small light in the darkness could still help someone find their way home. But there was something mysterious about his quiet life, something that had happened for many years. Every full moon night, when the silver moonlight covered the ocean and the entire coastline became silent, a letter appeared at the lighthouse door. No footsteps, no visitor, no sound of anyone arriving, just a simple old envelope waiting for him. At first, Samuel thought it was a mistake, but the letters continued, month after month, year after year, always on the night of the full moon. And every letter carried a message that slowly began to change the lonely lighthouse keeper's life forever. The lighthouse keeper who received a letter every full moon, a relaxing sleep story. For many years, Samuel had wondered about the mysterious letters. Every full moon, the same old envelope appeared at the lighthouse door. No footsteps, no visitor, no explanation. Only a quiet message waiting for him beneath the silver moonlight. That night, after carefully opening the newest letter, Samuel sat silently beside the old wooden table. The warm glow of the oil lamp moved softly across the room. Outside, the Atlantic Ocean continued its gentle rhythm. The waves touched the rocky shore, again and again, as if the sea itself was telling an old, forgotten story. Samuel looked down at the handwriting on the paper. It was different from any letter he had ever received. The words were simple, but they carried a feeling he had not felt in many years. The letter said, "Dear Samuel, I hope the lighthouse is still shining. I hope you are still watching over the ocean. Some lights are not meant only for ships. Some lights are meant for people who feel lost." Samuel stopped reading. His hands became still, because those words felt strangely familiar, like a voice from a distant memory, a memory he had kept hidden for decades. He walked slowly toward an old wooden box in the corner of the lighthouse. Inside were photographs from a life he had left behind. Pictures of his younger days, pictures of friends, and a small photograph of a woman named Emily, someone he had not thought about for many years. Samuel looked at the picture quietly. The sound of the ocean filled the room. And for the first time in a long time, the lonely lighthouse did not feel so empty. The next full moon was still weeks away, but Samuel started waiting. Not because he wanted another letter, but because he wanted to understand who was sending them and why they had chosen him. Days passed. The lighthouse continued shining, the ocean continued moving, and Samuel began to feel something he thought he had lost forever: hope. Then one evening, while cleaning the lighthouse storage room, Samuel found something hidden behind an old wooden shelf, a small envelope covered with dust, an envelope that had been there for almost 30 years, and written on the front were only 4 words. For Samuel, when you are ready. A relaxing sleep story. The old envelope stayed in Samuel's hands for a long time. He did not open it immediately. For some reason, he felt like the letter was not just a message, it was a memory waiting to return. The lighthouse was quiet that night. Only the sound of the ocean filled the room. The gentle waves, the soft wind, and the slow ticking sound of the old clock on the wall. Samuel sat beside the wooden table, looking at the words written on the envelope. For Samuel, when you are ready. After many years of wondering, after many nights of silence, Samuel finally opened it. Inside, there was a single piece of paper and a small old photograph. His hands trembled slightly as he looked at the picture. It was a photograph from 30 years ago, a photograph of him, Emily, and the old lighthouse before time had changed everything. Samuel closed his eyes, and memories slowly returned. He remembered the days when the lighthouse was not a lonely place, when laughter filled these walls, when someone was waiting for him after every long night at sea. Emily had always believed that the lighthouse was more than a tower. She believed it was a symbol of hope, a place that reminded people that even in the darkest nights, a light was always waiting. Samuel continued reading the letter. The handwriting was familiar. The words felt like they were written yesterday. The letter said, "Dear Samuel, if you are reading this, it means you finally found the courage to open the past. I know you have spent many years protecting this lighthouse, but I hope you remember, you were never meant to spend your whole life alone." Samuel became silent. A single tear slowly moved down his face. Outside, the full moon reflected across the ocean, and for the first time in decades, Samuel felt like someone was still watching over him. The next morning, Samuel walked around the lighthouse with a different feeling. The place that once felt empty now felt alive with memories. He cleaned the old windows, fixed the wooden shelves, and placed Emily's photograph beside the lamp. That night, Samuel looked toward the ocean, and he wondered, if the letters had been coming for years, who had been sending them? And why did they know so much about his past? Then, as the moon began rising again, Samuel heard something outside the lighthouse door. A soft sound, like someone had placed something on the ground. He slowly opened the door. The cold ocean wind touched his face, and there, under the silver moonlight, was another envelope. But this time it was different, because on the front there was a name Samuel had not seen in 30 years. From Emily. The envelope stayed on Samuel's mind all night. The words on the front, "From Emily," those 2 words felt impossible, because Emily had been gone from his life for 30 years. Samuel sat beside the lighthouse window, watching the moon slowly move across the ocean. The waves continued their peaceful rhythm, the same waves he had listened to for so many years. But tonight, everything felt different. The lighthouse did not feel like a lonely place anymore. It felt like a place holding a secret that was finally beginning to reveal itself. The next morning, Samuel carefully placed all the letters on the old wooden table. The letters from every full moon, the mysterious messages, the memories he had forgotten. He looked at them one by one, and suddenly he noticed something. Every letter had arrived on the same night, the night of the full moon. But there was another detail, something he had never noticed before. At the bottom of every letter, there was a small symbol, a tiny lighthouse drawn by hand. Samuel touched the symbol gently because he recognized it. Emily used to draw that same little lighthouse whenever she wrote notes to him. It was their secret symbol, a symbol that only they understood. For the first time, Samuel started to believe. Maybe these letters were not a mystery. Maybe they were a promise that had waited 30 years to be completed. That afternoon, Samuel searched through old boxes in the lighthouse. He looked through forgotten journals, old maps, and memories hidden away by time. Then, behind an old wooden cabinet, he found a small notebook. The cover was worn, the pages were yellow, but the handwriting was familiar. It was Emily's handwriting. Samuel opened the first page, and his heart became still. The notebook was filled with messages written years ago, messages meant for him. Emily had written about the lighthouse, about the ocean, about the nights she spent waiting for him. And on the final page, there was one sentence, a sentence that made Samuel stop breathing for a moment. If you ever feel alone, look at the lighthouse, because I left a part of my heart there. Samuel slowly closed the notebook. The sound of the ocean filled the room, and for the first time in many years, he smiled. That evening, Samuel climbed the lighthouse stairs all the way to the top. He looked at the shining light, the same light he had protected his entire life. But now, he understood something. The lighthouse was never only guiding ships, it was guiding him too. Then suddenly, the light moved across the ocean, and far in the distance, Samuel saw something, a small boat moving slowly toward the lighthouse, a boat that had not appeared there for many years. Samuel watched quietly, waiting, because deep inside, he knew. The next part of his story was finally arriving. The small boat moved slowly across the quiet ocean. Samuel stood at the top of the lighthouse. His eyes followed the gentle movement of the boat. For many years, he had watched countless ships pass by, but this boat felt different. There was something familiar about it, something that touched a forgotten corner of his heart. The boat came closer, and as the moonlight touched the waves, Samuel noticed an old wooden sign on the side. A name was written there, the same name he remembered from long ago. Emily. Samuel remained silent. The ocean breeze moved through the lighthouse, and memories from the past returned once again. After a few moments, the boat reached the shore. Samuel slowly walked down the lighthouse stairs. Every step carried a feeling he had not felt in decades: hope. When he reached the shore, he found no one there, only a small wooden box resting beside the boat. The box looked old, like it had traveled through many years and many storms. Samuel carefully picked it up. Inside, there was another letter. But this time, the letter was not from Emily. It was from someone else. The handwriting was different. The letter said, "Dear Samuel, if you have found this box, then you finally understand. Some stories are not meant to end. They simply wait for the right moment to continue." Samuel read the words slowly. His heart felt calm, not because he had found every answer, but because he realized something important. The letters were never trying to bring back the past. They were trying to help him accept it. Inside the wooden box, there was also a small key, an old lighthouse key. Samuel recognized it immediately. It belonged to a small room inside the lighthouse, a room he had not opened for 30 years. The room where he and Emily kept their most precious memories. Samuel returned to the lighthouse, holding the key tightly in his hand. The night was quiet, the moon was bright, and the old lighthouse stood proudly above the ocean. Samuel slowly walked toward the forgotten door. He placed the key into the lock. The door had been closed for decades, and with a soft sound, it opened. A warm smell of old memories filled the room. Inside, everything was still there. Old books, photographs, small gifts, and a wooden chair where Emily used to sit. Samuel looked around quietly, and then he saw something on the table, a final envelope waiting for him. But this envelope was different, because written on it were only 3 words: "Read this last." Samuel reached for the envelope, and outside, the lighthouse light continued shining across the ocean. Samuel held the final envelope in his hands. "Read this last." Those 3 words stayed in his mind. For a moment, he simply stood there, inside the forgotten room of the lighthouse, a room that had been silent for 30 years. The old wooden walls surrounded him, the same walls that had witnessed his happiest memories and his deepest loneliness. Slowly, Samuel sat down on the old wooden chair, the chair where Emily used to sit, the chair that had been waiting all these years. He opened the envelope carefully. Inside, there was a single letter and a small piece of paper folded beneath it. Samuel began reading. The handwriting was not Emily's. It was written by someone else. The letter said, "Dear Samuel, if you are reading this, then you have finally returned to the room you once left behind. There are moments in life when we believe something is lost forever. But sometimes the things we lose are simply waiting for us to find them again." Samuel paused. He looked around the room. Every object carried a memory. A small wooden picture frame, an old book, a little glass bottle collected from the beach. Everything had a story. He unfolded the second piece of paper, and there was a map. A simple, hand-drawn map of the lighthouse grounds. Samuel looked closely. There was a mark near the old garden behind the lighthouse, a place he had almost forgotten. The garden where Emily planted flowers many years ago. The letter continued, "Samuel, there is one more thing you need to see, not because you need answers, but because some memories deserve to be found." The next morning, Samuel walked outside. The ocean was calm, the sky was clear, and for the first time in many years, the lighthouse garden felt alive again. He followed the old path, the same path he and Emily used to walk together. The flowers were gone. The plants had grown wild, but the place still felt familiar. Then, near the old stone wall, Samuel found something. A small wooden box buried beneath the ground. His heart began beating faster. He carefully opened it. Inside, there were letters. Many letters, all written by Emily. But these letters were never sent. Samuel looked at the first page, and the first sentence made him completely still. "Dear Samuel, if you ever find these letters, it means the lighthouse finally brought you back to me." Samuel looked toward the ocean. The lighthouse light moved slowly across the water, and for the first time, he understood. The lighthouse had not only been guiding ships, it had been guiding a forgotten story, a story that was never truly finished. That evening, Samuel returned to the lighthouse, holding Emily's letters close to his heart. But as he placed them on the table, he noticed something strange. There was one final letter among them, a letter dated tomorrow's full moon. The letter was dated for tomorrow's full moon. Samuel looked at it quietly. After everything he had discovered, after all the memories that had returned, he thought there could be no more surprises. But the old lighthouse still had one more story to tell. That night, Samuel placed Emily's letters beside the lighthouse lamp. He did not feel alone anymore. The room was filled with memories, the sound of the ocean, the soft glow of the light, and the feeling that someone was still nearby. Samuel slowly opened the new letter. The handwriting was familiar, but this time it was not from Emily. The letter said, "Dear Samuel, some people spend their whole lives searching for a place to belong, but sometimes the place they're searching for has been waiting for them all along." Samuel smiled softly because he finally understood. The lighthouse had always been his home, not because of the walls, not because of the ocean, but because of the memories that lived inside it. The next day, Samuel began restoring the old room. He cleaned the shelves, repaired the wooden table, and carefully placed Emily's letters in a safe place. For the first time in decades, the lighthouse felt warm again. That evening, as the sun disappeared behind the ocean, Samuel noticed something outside. A young person was walking toward the lighthouse, someone carrying a small bag, someone who looked lost. Samuel opened the door. The young visitor stopped, and with a quiet voice said, "Are you Samuel, the lighthouse keeper?" Samuel nodded. The visitor smiled. "I was told that if I ever felt lost, I should come here." Samuel looked at the person with surprise, because those words were almost exactly the same words written in the first mysterious letter. Some lights are meant for people who feel lost. A gentle wind moved through the doorway. The ocean continued its peaceful song, and Samuel realized the letters were never only about him. They were about everyone who needed a light in the darkness. That night, the lighthouse shined brighter than it had in many years, and Samuel knew his story was not ending. It was beginning again. Because every lighthouse has a purpose, and every person has a light waiting inside them. Days passed, and the lighthouse slowly changed. It was no longer a lonely place standing above the ocean. It had become a place where people came when they needed hope. Samuel spent his mornings caring for the lighthouse, and every evening he welcomed anyone who arrived at his door. The young visitor stayed for a few days. Their name was Clara. Clara had been traveling for many months, searching for a place where she felt she truly belonged. Samuel listened quietly as Clara shared her story. He smiled, because he remembered feeling the same way many years ago, lost, uncertain, and searching for a sign. That night, the full moon appeared above the ocean. Its silver light touched the lighthouse walls. Samuel climbed the old wooden stairs, and for the first time, Clara followed him. At the top of the lighthouse, Samuel showed her the old lamp. "The light is not only here to guide ships," Samuel said softly. "It also reminds people that they are never truly alone." Clara looked at the ocean. A peaceful smile appeared on her face. Then, a small sound came from the old wooden table. A new letter had appeared. Samuel looked at it with surprise. Another full moon. Another message. He slowly opened it. The letter said, "Dear Samuel, a light becomes stronger when it is shared. The stories we keep inside our hearts are meant to help someone else find their way." Samuel looked at Clara, and he finally understood. The lighthouse was never only his story. It was a story that would continue through every person who found their way there. Years ago, Emily had left letters to guide him. Now Samuel would leave kindness to guide others. Outside, the waves moved gently. The wind whispered through the lighthouse, and the warm golden light continued shining across the dark ocean. Samuel closed his eyes, feeling peaceful, because he knew some lights never disappear. They simply pass from one heart to another. The seasons changed, and the lighthouse continued to shine. Months turned into years, but Samuel never forgot the first mysterious letter, or the person who had started this beautiful journey. Every full moon, a new letter arrived. Sometimes the words were short. Sometimes they carried a deep message. But every letter had the same purpose: to remind someone that hope was always nearby. Clara became a part of the Lighthouse family. She helped Samuel care for the old building. Together, they repaired broken windows, painted the wooden walls, and kept the warm light glowing above the ocean. One quiet evening, Samuel sat near the fireplace. The old letters were beside him. He looked at them and smiled. So many memories were hidden inside those pages. Moments of sadness, moments of love, moments that changed his entire life. Then, a gentle knock came from the lighthouse door. Samuel opened it. Standing outside was an old sailor. The sailor looked tired, but his eyes carried a small spark of hope. "I was told," the sailor said softly, "that this lighthouse is a place where lost people can find their way." Samuel smiled. Those words sounded familiar, almost like a message from the past. He invited the sailor inside. They shared a warm drink, and the sailor told his story. He had spent many years traveling the ocean, but after losing his way, he no longer knew where he belonged. Samuel listened carefully. Then he pointed toward the lighthouse lamp. "Sometimes," Samuel said, "we search for a light far away, but the light we need has been inside us all along." The sailor looked at the glowing lamp, and for the first time in many years, he felt calm. That night, the full moon appeared again. Samuel climbed the stairs to the top of the lighthouse, and there, waiting on the table, was another letter. He opened it slowly. The message said, "Dear Samuel, a true lighthouse does not only guide ships, it guides hearts. And as long as someone needs hope, the light will continue." Samuel looked out over the endless ocean. The waves moved gently beneath the moonlight, and he realized the greatest treasure was never the letters. It was the love and kindness they carried. The lighthouse keeper smiled, because he knew the story of the lighthouse would continue forever. The years continued to pass, and the lighthouse remained standing above the quiet ocean. The world around it changed. New ships arrived, new people came, and new stories were created. But the golden light from the lighthouse never stopped shining. Samuel was older now. His hair had turned silver, his steps were slower, but his heart was still full of peace. Every evening, he climbed the lighthouse stairs. He checked the lamp, he looked across the ocean, and he remembered everything that brought him to this moment. Emily, the mysterious letters, the lost travelers, and every person who found hope inside the lighthouse walls. One night, a special full moon covered the sky. The ocean looked like a silver blanket. Samuel walked to the old wooden table, and there was the final letter. His hands gently opened the paper. The handwriting was familiar. The message said, "Dear Samuel, every journey has a beginning. Every journey has an ending, but the love we leave behind never disappears. You were once searching for a light. Now you have become one." Samuel closed his eyes. A peaceful smile appeared on his face, because he finally understood. The lighthouse was never just a building. It was a reminder that even in the darkest nights, a small light can change everything. The next morning, Samuel sat beside the window, watching the waves move slowly. Clara sat beside him. Together, they watched the lighthouse beam travel across the ocean. Samuel whispered, "The light will always continue." And Clara smiled, because she knew one day someone else would come here feeling lost. Someone else would need hope, and the lighthouse would be waiting, just like it had waited for Samuel. That evening, the lighthouse shined brighter than ever. The ocean listened quietly. The wind carried the stories away, and somewhere beyond the waves, a new journey was beginning. Because every ending is simply another beginning. The years continued to pass, and the lighthouse remained standing above the quiet ocean. The world around it changed. New ships arrived, new faces appeared, and new stories were created. But the warm golden light of the lighthouse never stopped shining. Samuel was older now. His hair had turned silver. His steps had become slower, but his heart was peaceful. Every evening he climbed the old wooden stairs. He checked the lighthouse lamp, and he looked across the endless ocean. He remembered everything. The first mysterious letter, Emily's memories, the lonely nights, and all the lost souls who found comfort inside the lighthouse. One special night, the full moon filled the sky with silver light. The ocean was calm, the wind was gentle. Samuel walked toward the old wooden table, and there, waiting quietly, was one final letter. His hands slowly opened the paper. The handwriting felt familiar. The message said, "Dear Samuel, a person may spend many years searching for a place to belong. But sometimes that place has been waiting for them all along. You were searching for a light, but in the end, you became the light for others." Samuel smiled. A peaceful feeling filled his heart because he finally understood. The lighthouse was never just a tower. It was never just a lamp. It was a symbol of hope, a reminder that even the smallest light can guide someone through the darkest night. The next morning, Samuel sat beside the window. Clara sat beside him. Together, they watched the lighthouse beam move across the ocean. Samuel quietly said, "The light will always continue." And Clara smiled, because she knew one day